Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Town Council public meeting. We are very excited this evening to start the meeting of responders, including CHP and fire when they arrive. And then we way to a presentation by the McChrystal group, who is conducting a survey of LA County to gather feedback on the fire experience, Palisades, and experience that residents had, including going through the fire recovery, communications, and the whole gamut, but I'll let them explain. And then after that, I'm excited to be able to bring you two Senate District 24 candidates. We have Zennon, Ulyate-Crow, and that Zennon, that rhymes with John Lennon. That's how I remember. And we also have Evan, who will be joining us at 7:30. All right, so let's get started with and I'll working on the laptop.
Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. I have your March draft report. So for March of 2026, a total of 9 reported crashes in Topanga. When I say reported crashes, it just means stuff that's reported. Potentially could be more. If someone crashed and then didn't report it, then we have not. But we have 9 that were reported and that reports were taken. 5 crashes were property damage only. 4 of those crashes had injuries. None of the crashes involved a hit and run driver, and there was 1 DUI related crash, and there were no crashes. The causes of the crashes include driving under the influence, 1, turning movements, 4, other than driver or unknown cause, 1, change, 1, failure to yield on a left turn, 1, and 1, and then we'll compare that to March of 2025. So in March of 25, there were a total of 3 reported crashes, so a lot less, but you guys are still road closures at that time from the fires. So I think your guys' usual average is probably closer to that 9 than it is to the 3, but the fires had an effect on it. So one of those 3 crashes was property damage only, and 2 of the crashes. None of the crashes involved hit and run drivers, and there were 2 DUI related crashes, and there were no fatal crashes as well for March of 25. Cause of the crashes, DUI and unsafe turning movements. And then I looked into these crashes are happening, and I just logged ones that where there was more than 1 crash from March as well as March of 2026. So some of those are 7 at Summit to Summit. There's two of those 12 there happened at Summit to Summit, and 3 of those were at Wood Drive, and 2 of those were at Cheney Drive. So a lot of those are in where people are pulling out, whether they didn't yield or if they pulled out slow on the curb and hit from behind. Those were the crashes we were seeing in those spots.
So the crashes at Summit to Summit, someone's pulling out from Summit to go, someone's coming south and doesn't have time to see them.
Yeah. That's all for the crashes that I have. But on to our Traffic Alliance Safety Corridors campaign. So we're partnering with Cal Traffic Safety as well as Caltrans to try and reduce the number of vehicle crashes in our area of responsibility. So that includes Topanga as well. The officers have been directed to go into areas and issue citations. And our goal is to mileage death rate and the number of injuries through the enforcement as well as so I'll go to different events. I'll have a booth. I'll discuss this grant and kind of what the area to lower that mileage death rate. Now we got in October of 2025. We've been using this overtime from the grant to issue a lot more. So I think last time I told you guys we were over 500, and now we're over 1,000. Right now we have 1,049 citations that are tied to the grant. That means people on overtime were issuing those citations and say that the grant provided for those. Without the grant, those citations wouldn't have been. We have 3 arrests tied to the grant, as well as 5 who had suspended and revoked driver's licenses where the vehicles were towed. Then we had 87 verbal warnings. And that's from October of last year to April 14th of this year. And we still have more enforcement operations to go. Our goal for the grant was to reach 175 enforcement operations. I think we have around 20 more left. We still have some hours, so even if we reach those, we'll make sure we burn all everything. Around 1,100 hours to dedicate towards everything. Then on my end, I'm required to do 12 presentations and 12 booths as well. So I'll do those at different locations to try and get people to be more aware of driving safety. And
who goes to this grant?
I'm sorry?
Is it public grant, who paid for the grant?
I believe it's California Office of Traffic Safety.
So we live here, most of the traffic problems are weekends and people, thousands of people driving through the canyon. So when you do an education, you get dialing in on that. People going to the beach and because the locals are, we have to deal with it.
Yeah. I do most of the presentations like or at different city meetings. They use some of those at Malibu. But that's kind of the focus. I've gone to kind of like career fairs at schools, like as a way to get into the school.
Yeah.
A lot of times they don't for other reasons, but I'll use the career fair to also kind of go over driver safety and stuff. Have details there so the kids kind of get an understanding of what it's like. Yeah.
One more thing, you're gonna talk about cameras and special enforcement
Yeah,
area,
so
PCH.
as far as this goes, the highway patrol doesn't have anything to do with the cameras. So it's going to be the Office of Traffic Safety, that's where I got some of my information from. But research on it, just Carrie had sent me some questions, and so I can kind of what I found based off of that research. But as far as responsible for the cameras and fines and all that, we have nothing to do with it. Something that was mentioned was that there's a 60-day grace period once the camera is operational, and kind of what that means. And from what I can tell, that means that once the camera you're not going to get a ticket. You'll have 60 days where you might get a warning in the mail, and then after that 60 days, then you're going to start getting a ticket for every time you go 11 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Yeah. And it goes $50.
Yep.
$100. I think 100 miles an hour, maybe your license.
Yeah, I think it was like 500. I think is what it went.
And your license is taken away. They're all 150 of them, but they're LA City, aren't they?
They're going to be in that was going to be in different areas. So like San Fernando Valley,
Yeah.
they'll have some there. They'll have some.
They're not going to be on any.
Not that I know about.
We were told it's a state highway, you can't do that.
She's not here. I haven't heard if it'll be on.
Oh, we were
I know
told
there's
that-
certain cities that were approved, so being one of the approved ones, that's why they're in LA City and not here. Because there's approved cities.
Pilot. So I think if it goes well, it then maybe
Not a pilot, this is something.
a second pilot. I know,
Yeah.
sort of
And they
thing
could
going.
put clocks involved with this and all.
But LA City,
License plates.
LA City is kind of from Sunset to Chautauqua.
No, it's in all the way to up here. It's on Woodland
Yeah.
Hills.
I know, but on PCH, it's.
Oh, yeah, but no, but the cameras, if you look at the map, the cameras are all over.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the people online, I don't think it's on and off, but recording it a little fuzzy. So
But you need to use proper mic technique.
yeah, use
Make believe
the.
you're right next to you.
Taylor Swift.
So additionally, you're not going to get points on your license for these violations. The camera is not an officer witnessing the violation, so there will be no points attached. And if a driver who's not the owner that is speeding, the owner has to pay the fine. That's an interesting thing there. So you let someone borrow your car and they're speeding in it, ticket goes. They'll have a picture of it and what you get in the mail, and they use the license essentially to get your registration information. So that's another reason why if you're selling your car, make release the liability. Otherwise, it's still going to be in your name. And so you made it years ago, and now all of a sudden you're getting your tickets and you're on the hook for it. You're going to have to go to court, you're gonna fight. Just make sure you do that as well. We get that all the time at the office where people didn't do the release of liability. People have racked up thousands of dollars. They crashed into many things, and now all of a sudden they're getting for hundreds of thousands of dollars that they shouldn't be responsible for. So make sure you do that release of liability and the paperwork when you sell your cars. And then camera registers, you going 11 or more over, you'll get a ticket regardless of if you're driving at that speed. So it's just if it's at a point in time and the camera hits you at 11, you'll get a ticket. Doesn't matter how long you're driving at it. It's not like us where, to pace you or have a certain amount of distance that you're traveling at that speed before it will count it as a violation. Carrie had a question about street racers and how these cameras might impact them. I don't believe that they will too much because all they have to do is take the license. And that's something they already do regularly. They do that all the time. Cameras out there, and that is how we would find them. So you go to stores, usually don't have any license plates anyways. So she had a concern that maybe the camera push them on the Topanga where there's no cameras. But I don't see that. But if it does, we'll obviously evaluate it. If we start seeing more crashes, more street racing, then we can kind of direct our enforcement in a different way. I don't see it right now. And that's all I have on that. Like I said, we're not responsible for the system. It would be opposite of traffic safety. So if you do have some questions and you want to write them down for me, I can forward them up to traffic safety and see what they say.
Are there any plans for PCH in Malibu?
For the cameras, yes, the cameras should be coming to Malibu as well.
But they're reading license.
Those cameras, not sure.
Could you please remind everybody what to do if there's abandoned vehicles and if like the Topanga Canyon people going for extended periods of time and how the city can be.
So you see abandoned vehicles by the side of the road. They've been a long period of time. Try and get some information like the license plate number, get of it so we know what we're looking for. He does a very good job. He sends us a picture, license plate, everything that we need so we can run it. And that way we can tell if that car's still. We can drive out here to take a look at it.
But if they're camping, you got 72 hours.
72 hours? Yeah, so if it's parked, it's gonna get tagged for 72 hours. Have the yellow tag on it.
You guys come out, are you accurate about?
And because we have those 3 guys, our trace team that work on it, and if they're working on maybe in camping detail, they periodically come back and they'll check on it.
canyon. And just the propane link between the house and the propane tank. So we know how many propane tanks there are here in the canyon. So that's something that our residents should just be monitoring and do their truthfully a monthly check on that. And it's really good to have and they call for service on that. So the volatility of propane as compared to those that have natural gas is significantly different. So looking at how propane reacts, the explosive limits on propane is very, very wide as compared to natural gas. So just be cautious. And it's good as we come out of the winter time, we transition into summer. It's usually really good to have those inspections done by yourself or have somebody that's a professional do that. That's a good reminder for us. Well, now we're with all the traffic that's going into the canyon and all the constructions, we're able to navigate that with good communications with CHP, with the sheriff's department, also Caltrans. So your resources from the fire side and the law side are very aware of how we need to get to an emergency incident. And so we're pretty routinely on that. And with District 29 also, if there's any service disruption or anything that's going on with the utilities as far as water and of course Edison with power. So the communications with our organization and our partners are very, very good. So I feel we've been doing it a long time, so it's not like it's new. So looking forward to Saturday's evac drill. So I think we're going to have a great drill. I'm really looking forward to how many people actually participate and take an active role in that. And it's really good because with everything, nobody at this table can sit and say that people aren't informed on all things Topanga. And so hopefully the level of engagement we get through everybody doing that messaging, all the public outreach that we've done, you name it. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we have some newcomers is what we need. So
This is for the Zoom audience.
oh, the Zoom line, yeah. So Megan and I came across Saddle Peak down Fernwood, and we saw a couple signs that are up. So that's nice. Yeah, so that was good. And with that, I'll leave it to Megan, and then we'll be glad to field any questions if there is any.
You covered it?
Oh my gosh. I never knock it out of the park. Yes, sir.
Not this, but back to propane tanks.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been here many years, and propane was always this affordable alternative to electricity. Are we moving away from? Should we move away that because with the proclivity of fires? Propane tanks dangerous.
They are if they're unmaintained. Anything can be.
But can they handle a firestorm? Can they handle?
So it depends. So there's requirements you have to have for propane. You have to have adequate clearance around it. You have to have bollards if there's parking around there. People put up just to give that extra security around it. They put up concrete block around there to keep it so it keeps that heat energy away from it. So what we see with propane tanks that are involved in fire, they have a ventilation device that detects heat, then it blows that off. Can they liquid propane create a situation called a flooding, a blowing liquid, expanding vaporous explosion? The answer is yes. So there is hazards with propane, whether it's in, most of them you see here routinely between 125, 250, and 500, depending on the size of your home. So I don't have statistics on how dangerous they are or are not. There's different sets of hazardous conditions associated with fire with any type of flammable gas as compared to electricity, but electricity it can be very dangerous as well. So propane can be challenging because it settles low. And we know we have a lot of multi-story homes. So the way the propane settles is different than natural gas, which rises. So, but I can't say whether there's a trend on people.
Well, some of us are, but it's just kind of sounds like common sense to me to go with do solar panels and electric if you can.
When we did all the home evaluations, one of the things we noticed was propane tanks that had vegetation above them. And we always recommended people to keep that clear. up to the sky above that thing,
Correct.
because if that thing shoots up and goes into a tree.
Anything, yeah. Yes, sir.
So we shouldn't have had Prometheus get started in fire, is that it?
Have what now?
Prometheus.
Yeah, there you go.
Way back.
Yeah.
I have a question
Oh,
about,
yes.
on Saturday. So we're supposed to wait for the alert on our phone? Or,
Yeah, tell us what we're supposed to do.
Do what you're told, don't take. Yeah, take direction. Yeah. Megan
Tell
has
us
the
what you
whole.
expect us to do.
So, want to remind everyone to, enable test alerts in your phone under notifications in your
There's
settings.
flyers in the back if anyone needs instructions.
Stacy put flyers in the back with instructions, step by step. And so in addition to the test Ulyate alert that's gonna be sent out, there's also going to be alert LA County, notifications sent out. So if you're not signed up for that, please sign up for that on, ready.lacounty.gov. Harry's holding the flyers.
Yeah, yeah,
And
let's put them so people at home can see.
so at 9 a.m.,
I get 'em.
the alert LA County alerts will be sent out, which is the opt-in system, and then there will also be the test Ulyate alert sent out to everyone's phones who have enabled those notifications. So those are going to be the alerts that are sent out. But 9 a.m. is the start time of the drill, and then once you actually evacuate, you will head toward King Gillette Ranch, check in with us, so we can keep track of everyone that participated. And we'll have some resources there available, and then you can check in, get some resources, and then head back out. So it shouldn't take too long.
So you expect a lot of people to
We're hoping for a lot of people.
get on the road at one time and try to make it to King Gillette?
We want to exercise it. That's
Yeah,
the
but
whole
most people
intent.
wouldn't be going to King Gillette during a fire, wouldn't they?
Maybe it depends.
Okay.
I
They
think one,
could. Absolutely, they could.
I think our understanding of it is that zones 1 and 3
1, 3, and 4 are going to be in the
are
direct
going to be
order.
an order,
Order.
meaning like you get the call and you're
You're
supposed to go.
be, yeah.
Right, so, and just remember, those in order, thank you. The order, the expectation is you've already done your ready, set, go, and now you're in the go mode, and you go to King Gillette Ranch. If you're in the warning, you don't have to wait for it to be in order. You can go as well. And just remember, if any evacuation component, and I know you've heard me say it, they all have one commonality, whether it's shelter in place and order or warning. The only commonality they have is time. It's only commonality. And so if you're in an order, we are estimating that there's enough time for people to evacuate and get to a safe place. And that safe place is going to be designated, and it might be a temporary place to
Is
go.
it tiered though, like they're not?
We try to tier it based upon the order, then what zones touch those orders are in warnings.
But in the real fire, they don't do that anymore.
No, we do.
I just get out, go. That's what I get. It used to be 2 zones at a time, alternating.
It just depends.
Okay, good.
So I can say, yeah, we have to look at the rate of spread. And I talked to us on whether we're gonna do an order, because one thing again, that's why the home parking comes into place, because we may be in a shelter in place.
Well, all right, some people might get shelter in place.
They might get a shelter in
Okay.
place on an active fire. One thing of my concern is if we do an order and we put people on a road system getting overrun by fire, that may not be the safest place for them to be. If we've done our home parking, we've done our defensible space, that may be your safest option, which is going to be completely frightening. But the vulnerability you have in your car when you can't see, you can have mechanical issues with your vehicle because of how thick the smoke is. And we have that happen frequently with vehicles that get impacted with smoke. And plus the limited visibility, we don't want somebody to get overrun by fire on a road system and or not be able to see and not navigate the road. Now we have somebody who goes over the side. So that's why, thank you, Ryan, for all the home hardening and all the efforts from this Firewise community that you're doing. to enhance that life safety, which is the home hardening and shelter in place, because it needs to become a reality for people. And going into the order, what we find is when you have an order, well, it doesn't look that bad. And I talk this, I don't want to be inconvenienced. And then when it becomes too late, your options are limited. Your options are limited.
So are you studying it as it happens?
We are.
You gotta have people around.
We're gonna have people around. We're everywhere.
And try to explain this more to people. Most people don't read this stuff. They see the sign. They don't know. They might get a phone call. So I'll post more information.
Yeah, we've had very robust information that's gone out.
This
Quite a while now.
It's scary. People,
Yeah.
you know,
This went out to everybody not too long
I
ago.
didn't get this. I got one changed.
This one came out and it has a big section in it about shelter in place. So everyone should have gotten one of these in the mail.
I didn't though. I've been here 40 years.
Well, that was the mail carrier, Aaron.
No, they don't make.
I got extra, Dennis, I could get.
No, I got two. They don't make mistakes. The mail carrier never makes mistakes.
But one point, so we're just talking about shelter in place. During the drill, there will be no shelter in place. It will
okay.
only be ordered for zones 1, 3, and 4, and then the rest of the zones will be in warning status.
Okay, so the people who live closer to like, like PCH, their, warning will say still go to King Gillette.
Yeah, that's the assembly point for everyone.
Just as an information point, Arson Watch is gonna be doing a mock red flag Friday and Saturday, so you might see us out at the canyon just practicing. We're gonna work base station. We have a lot of new members, so we're just trying to, when it's clear and sunny, get them acclimated, so then when it's not, so ready to go.
When it's important, you don't have this happen.
Yes, yes.
The other thing is at Kings Gillette Ranch, there are going to be tables set up. We're setting up the table. We're going to talk about home hardening. And there are going to be other groups setting up tables. So there'll be kind of an informational kind of thing there, not just going to Kings Gillette Ranch for no reason. There'll be something to do there. So there'll be some information for the community as well.
And a survey to take it in.
And the reason why they do the practice, Branch Rickey, the Brooklyn Dodgers said luck is the residue of design. So if you design, your luck improves.
On this topic, in one of the WhatsApp groups I was on, I saw somebody was posting and talking about it, that there's reluctancy to evacuate because we are held up on not being able to re-enter our houses within a reasonable time. And, I just like on the radar and in the discussion, I know we're going to talk about the survey that was done and such. And, it's just something to address. I think with, like more times that we have to evacuate and then it's longer and longer to get back into our houses, creates a reluctancy.
Yeah, we understand that evacuation fatigue. We understand that. And we talked about this here in this setting and other ones about that evacuation fatigue. We take it very serious on when we need to evacuate people and how long we need to keep them out. And the reason it may be an infrastructure component, it might be the firefighting mission. There's a lot. Well, I can say on Palisades, I know it went for a long time. But one thing you have to remember, when people have the ability to leave, then they want to come back in, or they can't come back in, and it creates that fatigue. So they're reluctant to leave. But then now a lot of the resources get assigned to a different task on a humanitarian mission because so now the same resources that are combating the fire and doing all the logistical support for the incident, we now have to, and I talked about this, that we have this whole bootlegging operation going on to support people that don't want to leave. And it's actually the wrong thing to do.
It's complicated. It costs a lot of money to leave.
We do have the McChrystal group, and then also JC is gonna update us on supervisor and courthouse officer. Definitely hang tight, because I suspect she'll be talking about the evacuation drill on Main Street. But yeah, let's go ahead and get her worked in, so we can get to the McChrystal group and then get to our candidate.
I'm just gonna pass this over to whoever's next.
JP.
Casey, but it's the type of thing, you use a microphone like this, because it has gain. Once you do this, turn it into omnidirectional. You don't have to.
Thank you.
Sound engineer.
And I'm sure that would be totally.
Okay, well, we'll start far away. Thanks for having me here. I'm recording on behalf of Daniel and Clinton, who you usually see here, who's gonna make it today. But first, yeah, just feel like we all kind of piece together what's happening this Saturday. The last point I'll make is that also there'll be a QR code to scan if you haven't signed up for your access card yet. You can do that there as well. A lot of resources there. And I left the flyer for the drill. If you haven't seen it in your mail, haven't seen it anywhere else, there's a QR code you can scan for further information. Our office put out a press release. There's also the, and on our social media, actually, you can see step by step, like a video of supervisor walking you through on how to turn on the test notifications in your settings. And then, yeah, the instructions are back there, but I think everyone covered everything else on the drill. So yeah, looking forward to that. Moving along into other updates. So next, the board is taking action against fraud in the home health and hospice industry because some companies have been taking advantage of vulnerable seniors and patients. The goal is to better protect residents, to make sure care providers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Right now, oversight can be confusing because multiple agencies are involved. The county wants local, state, and federal agencies to work together more closely so fraud cases don't fall through the cracks. Supervisor Horvath broke ground on a $14 million water project in Malibu that will improve water pressure and make it easier for firefighters to respond during fires. The project will benefit Malibu, Topanga, and Sunset Mesa. This is part of a larger effort to modernize the local water system serving more than 20,000 people in the San Juan Mountains. Next, the board is moving forward with a plan to improve services for young people in county juvenile facilities by focusing more on youth development, education, support services, and positive outcomes. The board also approved a broader effort to improve how the county delivers mental health care to people experiencing homelessness, including more services on the street and shelters and encampments to meet people where they're at. We can't expect someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis to find their way to a facility at all times. So we must have tools in place to meet them where they're at. The board extended price gouging protections for residents impacted by the fires, so businesses cannot unfairly raise prices on rent, goods, services while families are still recovering. The county is also reviewing a motion has passed to review road work and other construction happening on high red flag days or high fire danger areas to make sure that work is paused on those days where weather conditions may make wildfire risk especially high. And that is all the updates I have on behalf of the office. So if you have any questions, I can try to answer, and if not, I can put you in touch with Daniel.
Great. All right, please no questions because we have to get to the Christmas. No, if you have questions, do ask them, or maybe take JC aside and ask her or email. So I want to make sure we have time for the fire.
I'll be here afterwards too.
Take you some often.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you to Carrie, thank you to the board for having us this evening, allowing us to participate, and thank you to Supervisor Horvath's office for making the connection here. I know I see some familiar faces. I know some of you were on the Emergency Management Task Force meeting earlier today, so I apologize. I'm going to be hearing some of this information for the second time. My name is Chris Taylor. I'm with the McChrystal Group. McChrystal Group is the independent consultant that was hired to conduct the after-action review for the Eden and Palisades fire, which was hired by LA County. Back in September, we released part one of our after-action review that is focused mainly on the alerts and evacuation process of the fires. We are now working on part two, which is repopulation, recovery, and also a section about recovery services that residents had access to and how to utilize them. So the purpose of this work is to understand what happened, identify lessons learned, and to develop recommendations that focus on recovery, repopulation, and recovery services. I just really want to say that this is not an investigation in any way. This is not an effort to assign blame to any one individual person. This is just about helping the county strengthen its disaster recovery apparatus moving forward in the future. We are reviewing several focus areas that include repopulation and reentry, recovery services, shelter and housing, public communications, health and safety, volunteering and donations management, and support for vulnerable populations. It is our goal to understand how these systems worked during the fires and how it was for the residents and the actual users of these services. We wanted to identify what worked well, where people face barriers, and where improvements are needed. So in order to better do that, we need to hear directly from the people who actually utilize these services and were affected by this disaster. And a public survey is one of many ways that we are gathering this information. So it is designed to give residents a voice in how the recovery systems were operated, how they were disseminated. We want to capture real experiences across neighborhoods, across both events, and across different types of populations. This ensures that the final recommendations are grounded in real lived experiences and not just internal county processes. They're not just based solely on the county's documentation. Ultimately, again, hoping to strengthen for the future. So we are intentionally seeking a wide range of voices. This includes, and I'm going to read it because it's a long list, residents who evacuated during the fires, residents who experienced property damage or loss, people who utilize recovery searches such as the debris removal program, disaster recovery centers, the one-stop permitting services, or if any of the residents relied on a shelter or temporary housing. We also want to hear from vulnerable populations that include seniors, older adults, people with access and functional needs, individuals in residential care facilities, justice-involved individuals and their families, and people experiencing homelessness. Lastly, we'd also like to hear from any individuals that attempted to or were successful in volunteering or donating any money or physical goods. Today, we are asking for your help and the help of this board to help get this survey out into the community. We would like you to share with your constituents, your friends, your neighbors, community groups, neighborhood associations, local partners. We will drop a link to that in the chat for those that are online. I'm sure you saw some happy, bright, smiling people up front at the table. They are part of our McChrystal group team. If this pertains to you and you'd like to take a survey tonight, we will be out there. We can help walk you through the process. Also, additionally, if you have any questions about the after action review or anything that we're working on, we're happy to talk. Or if you just want to chat, I'll be hanging out there. So at the end of the day, we feel that the more voices we hear, the stronger and more representative this review is going to be. And at the end of the day, making sure that recovery efforts are more effective, they're more equitable, and more responsive to the real community. So thank you all for your time. I really hope you participate. If you were affected, please, we'd love to hear your voices, your chance.
So we had a meeting at their community. This is their community center. This is in addition to that. This is your.
Yeah. Well, this is.
You came and interviewed us.
This is like part two.
This is part two.
Part two. That was part one.
Yeah.
There were hardly anybody that showed up to that.
Correct. That was regarding alerts.
So I'll put this out on. I have big social media. You want me to put this out?
Please.
Because that was a weak sauce.
We're happy to hear anybody.
You have the link to the survey in my.
I just took it up here.
Oh, fabulous. Good, good. How are you doing in terms of getting responses so far? I know I can tell from my newsletter stats that some people have been clicking on your link. I don't know if they've completed the survey, but
yeah, so the survey has been live for a couple weeks now. So we are getting some pretty good feedback. We're getting some pretty good numbers, but we always want more, and we need more, and we need people, like you said, across a range of populations who had different experiences and were affected in different ways. So we're just keep pushing it, making sure that we're getting it to everybody who wants to participate.
Do we get to hear the results when you're done?
Absolutely, yeah. The report will be published, and it'll be with the county, and there will be a board presentation as well.
Fantastic.
Question, what was the sample size of the responses for the part one?
For part sample size, as
How many people took the survey?
I'd have to go back and look. That's almost a year since that time. So yeah, but absolutely, I can look when we're out there. Come talk to me, and I'll get you that number.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And I want to say Chris Taylor had some very good Zoom tips to sort of help us get back on track. Thank you, Chris, multi-talented. Okay, I wanted Ashley, she has a community announcement over this library.
Yeah, this is just something fun to share because I've been asking for it for years for the library and for the community really. You can now recycle batteries at the library. So old batteries, no e-waste, just household batteries in our coffee machine. I'm very excited to announce that. Right?
Yeah, actually, we're ahead of time.
Okay.
Now from the supervisor's office.
I just want to shout out one more reminder for everyone. If you weren't aware, we held a town hall in this room about a month ago now, or almost a month ago now. So it kind of pieces together at each step. So the evacuation guides, if you didn't get it, hopefully you can find it somewhere. But that was sent out, and then we hosted a town hall, and it was a great about an hour and a half, 2 hours of very informational from sheriff, fire, CHP was there. And so if you weren't able to attend online or in person, the recording of that is on TSEP's website, I'm pretty sure. And so I highly recommend reviewing that if you want, even ahead of Saturday, because that can help in practicing for Saturday. So, yeah. That's all.
All right. We have a question from Todd.
May we go back to the fire department?
Yes.
So I know that you're.
Actually, Drew, you've always had more. So,
Yeah, we're not done with you.
That's fine.
5 minutes worth of stuff you want to talk about?
Whatever, we'll field any questions.
Yeah,
you
two
want.
quick things. One, if we can go back to the rattlesnakes.
Rattlesnake.
Can you remind everybody what the protocol is for the fire department with rattlesnakes?
I can. So rattlesnakes, we do not relocate them. We actually
Euthanize.
yes.
Yeah. So, and then,
Everybody
Roger, I
knows.
believe in your notifications, it's the gentleman Delmar Lathers.
There's wranglers around.
Wranglers around. So we should just remind the community,
We do.
call the, yeah.
Yeah, we put it up to people.
Yeah, there's options. You
Don't call the fire
Don't
department.
call the fire department.
Yeah, unless you want us to use them.
So that's one. The question number two
The
is
rest of the year.
prescribed burns. I
Uh-huh.
understand that there was potentially going to be Iowa burn on the 17th, which would be this coming week.
It was deferred, there was an announcement.
It was canceled, right?
Yes, sir.
Is that gonna get more postponed? Do we have dates and what can we do within the community to get that message out? So that way people can anticipate that a bit more. So I think there's a lot of community members that weren't aware that there was going to be a pile burn. And so anything that we can do to get that messaging out, just to manage expectations.
So I'll let Megan talk to the messaging. I'll
Yep.
talk to the pile burn. So yes, it's being canceled. But I canceled on the day that we're supposed to do it. So yes, it'll transition into a postponement. Reason being is we need the right weather recipe to conduct it. So it's not in the best interest to do that because they're focusing for relative humidities that are in the teens. And also the next day, potentially 30 to 50 mile an hour winds. So one thing that we look at is what is the weather variables and also the fuel conditions to do that. So we need to find the right, what we call the windows to meet the burn objectives, which the balance of how the state of the fuels are and what the impacting weather is going to be the day of the burn, but also going into the night and into the next day. So that's the reason why we're postponing.
Understand.
And then I'll let Megan talk to the messaging and how those dots get connected. Anybody else that has any other input, I'd love to hear.
I remember way back, we used to have it burn in an old canyon on Bunnell Park, like a week after New Year's, where everyone would take their Christmas trees and others.
Yeah, but we don't do that anymore in the open.
But I'm just saying, we were able to be responsible back then. How can we work with the county fire department to enable something like that where?
You want your neighbors to do, I don't want my neighbors to do that anymore. They did it in the 80s. I don't. You want your neighbors to go get and do that?
Yeah, we're not gonna. Yeah,
That's too
that's one thing.
random.
Yeah, you can't just go and do
But
open burning.
Go ahead. That's a couple of years ago. There were
Permittable.
when a fire starts, there's the highway patrol, sheriff and LAPD, the roads, if we evacuate, it depends on which fire, but sometimes there's a day or two before the roads are blocked. And I asked James Grosso about, there was some kind of system that was being developed so that they all communicate, so the roads are under, everybody understands the roads at one time. Is that happening at all?
You mean for law enforcement understanding and controlling the road system?
Yes, all three of them.
Yeah, so we rehearsed with the CHP.
Or do they all communicate?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they
yeah.
didn't in the past. There's tons of examples.
We do communicate. And so one thing that we've done proactively with the sheriff's department and CHP is we put up, we have the Conex containers in desired locations so we can start. Because one thing when we get a fire, one thing we need to do is isolate the area from traffic coming into the canyon. So we have traffic control points. You may have heard me talk about some of the primary traffic control points for Topanga Canyon are at New Canyon and Mulholland, Old Topanga and Mulholland, Pacific Coast Highway, and Topanga Canyon. Also Stunt, Sharin, and Saddle Peak is another.
I mean, I get that, but I've been through plenty of fires where it was staggered. Sheriff didn't show up for a couple days. Even a Woolsey fire.
I think these are two different things though.
I'm talking about, is there, and I asked James Grosso about it, is there some way you guys communicate rapidly about?
We do, yeah.
Is it a system? Like
It is a system.
Because I was told there was.
I'm gonna jump in on this because I was present at.
Hold on a second. I was out one day and there was a fire and traffic was crazy. And that, is there somebody like a commander that handles, when there's a fire, that handles all the traffic?
Yeah, so.
Can I now jump into this? This is right what I was going here, and I'm giving you the floor on this. But we went down there specifically to make not just what was going on with everything out there, but also how to keep all the machinations of companies coming in from way out in other areas who have to be brought in to do traffic and things like this, and at the same time, making sure that all the records and everything were being held. I believe you were at that one. It was a pretty amazing work off fire that allowed the fire and a lot of that stuff that you were just talking about to happen, because there wasn't anything, everything was going so smoothly. It was amazing. I was working with Richard Bloom at that time. And the way I watched how the sheriffs and fire departments were working.
I'm not talking about it's not working, but I just have been through.
We only have 5 minutes before it's a hard close to go to Zennon. We have 2 questions in the chat, one from James Grasso and one from Susan.
I don't think we got the answer.
Yeah, I need to go back to.
So if you can answer that, then we have to get in at least one more question.
So to your question,
Yes, thank you.
so these prescribed fire projects have been approved for many months now. MRCA is the lead agency on these projects, and LA County Fire has been contracted to assist them with these burns.
Yeah.
And so we've done multiple town hall meetings, and so on November 20th, we did a Beyond the Brush town hall meeting, which was here and also on Zoom. Then every household was mailed the evacuation guide, and in the packet with the evacuation guide was a sheet from our forestry division that basically listed all the fuel modification methods, and then also had a link directly to MRCA's project list of all the approved projects in the area that we're working on. And then we had another meeting at the top of Topanga on February 17th, while you were there, specifically about this pile burn project. And then we had the Topanga EVAC town hall on March 24th, and that I believe was also discussed there.
Sure, but was it discussed? The reason why I'm asking is because of on the 17th, if suddenly you're seeing plumes of smoke.
So
coming out of the canyon.
MRCA released a press release on Monday.
Okay.
Regarding the burn and saying that it was going to be on Friday. However, then when it was decided that it was going to be postponed, they sent out a press release, I believe, yesterday morning or this morning.
Yeah, we posted it out.
And saying that the burn is postponed, but it also stated in that press release that the burn will happen within this month, and to allow for flexibility with communications, we're going to notify everybody within 72 hours of the the actual burn date. So because the weather is so variable that we can't, 5 days in advance, things change, obviously, so.
Yeah, just as long as it's managing the expectations of the community, so that way there isn't a panic that there's a fire, which then creates rumors and then.
Yeah, no, there will be a press release from MRCA directly, and then that will be shared with all of the group. TSEP will have it, fire department, we will all amplify that message from MRCA, so it will be well known. But
And it will impact on all of the WhatsApp channels as well.
Yeah,
Like say,
and the TSEP neighborhood networks all got pushed this. If you want to see the press release on the website, it's mrca.ca.gov. That has to go to the news section, and that press release is there, as well as the new one saying it was.
and both of the meetings are also recorded
Yeah,
as well.
meetings are great. So it's not, it's just, there was a rumor it was canceled.
well, that date was canceled,
The date was
but we will
canceled
be doing it in the new.
because of what, due
It
to
was a
weather.
great meeting, thank
It
you.
will happen within the month.
Okay, because everybody's really.
Felt really confident.
Yeah, and the meetings are online at the TSEP YouTube channel, so you can see them. Anybody can look at them. They were recorded, and it's really good information.
All right, let's see. James has a question. James, did you want to chime in?
Actually, no, I did not have a question. I heard my name mentioned several times. I was just going to clarify what he was talking about. And traditionally, yes, there is unified command. Chief Smith addressed it. There is unified command on traffic closures, but I will admit that that's always a tough part. We have different agencies running different control points, and it's always a challenge. And there's also staffing issues. Why sometimes there's closures that don't always get staffed because there's staffing issues in big fires. But it's an issue, and it's been going for a few fires, and everybody is indeed aware of that road closure issue.
Thank you.
All right, great. All right, now we
Getting
have
better.
Susan. Can you make it quick?
Yes, I just wanted to add on that I think that the protocol that Drew, that you were being addressed on is the one that took place for the first time with OEM and law enforcement and I believe fire during doing this, what we call the soft closures to residents only, when there was a condition of red flag warning. And what that did is, in the case of the January 7th fire, is that allowed for the fact that unfortunately there was a fire that came 2 days after that. But our roads were clear of commuters and people were prepared. It was an easy evacuation for Topangans. Wish more people had evacuated. But that's the protocol that I think someone mentioned, that James may have mentioned, about being implemented in the future, that has now become a policy protocol to do those kinds of soft closures or residents only on emergency vehicles, of course. So I think that was important to make that distinction. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We're now starting the candidate portion of the morning. Okay, so everybody else is gonna have to wait. All right, but thank you very much. Really good information today. Thank you. All right, so switching now to the candidate discussion. We actually have both candidates here now. We're going to start with Zennon, and we also have Ellen Evans, who will be starting at 7:30. I wanted to kind of open it with just letting Zennon tell us a little bit about himself, why he decided to run, and if you could tell us why you think you would be the right person, that would be great.
Fantastic. Should I get a mic? Though?
Yes, get the mic. Let's get Zennon's mic. Sorry, you're very more on the ball than I am.
Gotta make sure to eat the mic somehow.
Excellent.
Proper microphone, please.
Tell me, am I doing it right? Is this regular?
I don't know how you're not doing it.
All right. Well, I'm so excited to be here. As you heard, my name is Zennon Ulyate-Crow. I'm a lifelong Topangan, born and raised. I'm also a fifth generation Californian on my father's side, who was also literally by my side. And, you know, our family originally came out here as 49ers in 1849 because California was the land of opportunity. And they started out farming in San Jose and eventually made their way down to Los Angeles and worked as below the line entertainment industry workers. On my mom's side, they came over. She is a first generation immigrant and found that Los Angeles was a place that she could achieve opportunity in the arts that she valued so much. And throughout all of that, we saw how California, with its sheer beauty, the sheer opportunity, and the absolute integrity and wondrousness of its people,
the ingenuity, the strength, the creativity of what makes this place so incredible is what drives people to be here. And I'm very proud to be a Californian, especially a Topangan, but I also want to level with folks and be very clear that I am the first generation of my family that is facing increasingly long odds about accessing that California dream, about accessing that American dream. For a little bit of context about how I ended up here, the first thing I ever tried to do in the 8th grade was build a safe pathway between Topanga Elementary and Topanga Library, where we are sitting today. Because every day I would get off the Revere school bus, I would walk along the side of Topanga Canyon Boulevard, and if any of you guys have ever tried to walk on that stretch of road right over there, you will know it is a nightmare. There are rocks in the road, you've seen people and trucks that have flipped over, and if we're very fortunate there weren't pedestrians there at the time. So as an 8th grader, I decided to knock on some doors and ask people to build a pathway through their backyards. And that went as well probably I would expect it to go. But in the end, I got connected with an individual from Caltrans. And that individual, I was like, why can't we do something? Let's make something happen. They said, we're not going to make any safety improvements to the road because if we do, we'll be held liable for any potential mishap that could happen. And so we're going to keep it the way it is. And in the end, we got those, half plastic bollards that are somewhat there today. And that was a really formative experience for me because it was the first time where I thought we're going to do something as a community. We're going to make something happen. And, here I am learning about civics in elementary school and middle school, how we make things happen, the space program. And I thought, well, it shouldn't be that hard to put up a guardrail on the side of the road. And that is the thing that is crazy, is that I'm growing up in a generation where we can't even put up a guardrail on the side of the road, where people before us sent people to the moon. And, I'm very excited about Artemis, it's cool that we're doing those kinds of things, but it is so hard to do the very basic things that make our community the places we want them to be. In the 10th grade, I started going to Sacramento to lobby for affordable housing bills. I began to work on a whole ton of congressional and Senate campaigns across the country in red to blue races. I became the youngest commissioner in Santa Cruz history on transportation and public works, helping improve street safety. 50% of metro riders in the county were students. I also founded a nonprofit called the Student Homes Coalition and passed 4 pieces of legislation making it easier to build affordable student housing and have stronger tenant protections across this state because 9% of students at UC Santa Cruz were experiencing homelessness. 9%. Think about that. In every single class, 1 out of every 10 kids had experienced homelessness that year. And so, again, through that whole experience, I ended up going to DC for a while. I worked on the progressive outreach team for the Biden campaign. Came back here, was working as executive director of a nonprofit in Santa Monica, and I still couldn't afford to move out of my parents' house. Sorry, Dad. I'm very fortunate that my room did not get converted into an office, and I still had a bed. And I found time and time again talking to my friends who had graduated college with comp sci degrees, economics degrees, things that were seen as the traditional safe pathways to success. They were getting jobs. They were all working in food service. They were working in minimum wage jobs, which are important parts of the economy. But at the same point, if people with comp sci degrees can't get a job in computer science, then something's seriously messed up. And that's not even to start about the housing crisis. The fact that the idea of what you need to do to get a house in California, you need to be in the top 10% of income earners to afford the median home. It's insane. And so all of these things came together, the realization that we can't do things the basic way. As someone who has experienced a housing crisis firsthand, as someone talking about fire tonight, it's been evacuated from my house more times than I can count because of wildfire. I realized that I have to step up and be the change I want to see. Because in the end, we need a new generation of leadership. We need someone who's going to come in here and tackle things differently and do it differently. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And time and time again, I've found that when I've approached legislation in Sacramento or approached doing different issues, we've come at it from a whole new perspective and found a lot of success in ways that people didn't expect us to find success. Nobody expected me to pass legislation as a freshman in college. Nobody expected me to end up creating a nonprofit to do these things. But because we utilize the tools of the 21st century through social media, through organizing, through connecting with community, not just connecting with political groups, that's how we were able to make actual change through movements. I mean, one thing we're doing in this campaign, and maybe over here as a volunteer in the campaign, we're bringing out young folks. We are turning people out and showing them there is something positive to have in this. And so I'm really excited to be running in the seat I was born and raised in, because I care about this community. I care about what I know we need to do to make this place better. And I want to govern with everybody, not just for everybody. So I'll open it up for questions.
Excellent. All right. So just one quick thing I want to jump in and say that I've been watching several of the debates, and both of you candidates have really, made really outstanding points. I mean, as of all candidates, but you're saying something different. In particular, you are bringing a new generation's perspective to the table. And I will say, me personally, I am genuinely worried about our next generation, our workforce housing. Like everyone talks about homelessness and housing for the housing for the homeless, but I'm worried about the housing for our next generation of workers who are going to support the pension funds and all the other benefits that we enjoy here. And I know I had a conversation with Drew, and Drew's going to but he's having trouble finding housing, or some of his firefighters are having trouble affording housing. So firefighters, teachers, nurses, young professionals. We basically have a pyramid scheme of an economy. If we don't have the bottom here to kind of prop up the top, we all go down together. So we really do need to focus on this issue. It's not just a Gen Z issue. It's all of the rest of us issue too. So I thank you for bringing that topic up. But let me open it up to the floor.
Thank you for your little stump speech there. As everyone knows, UTLA and 2 other unions did, settle their strikes, right before the deadline. And one of the major concerns for the UTLA was that entry-level teachers can't afford to live close to their schools. And this is something that's been festering for a while. And let's see that UTLA is one of their major concerns. But the question is, how can we make sure that happens across the economy, not just with the public employees?
Yeah, and it all comes back to the cost of housing for everybody, right? We talk about these issues as if they're isolated, but we are all facing it. And I appreciate you pointing out exactly, just because Gen Z may be acutely facing this doesn't mean that everybody else is also facing this issue. In terms of what we need to do for the housing crisis so that people can afford to live next to their jobs, the problem is that we don't tackle building housing at the actual scale to solve the crisis in California. The way that we build affordable housing is that we give money and tax credits to nonprofits who then build affordable housing on select sites. And there's competitive processes where you've got nonprofits fighting against nonprofits for limited forms of funding. There's millions of different types of sources of funding. And then you don't get to unlock the actual economies of scale of the 4th largest economy in the world to actually try and tackle the crisis of building enough affordable housing. And so what we need to do, especially, and you see it for teachers, right? You see what we could do is actually have the state be a builder of housing. The state needs to step up and be the one who's saying, hey, look, we've got all this empty land at the same time as teachers can't afford housing in the communities that they teach in. Elementary schools are closing because declining enrollment, and we have all sorts of empty land that should be being turned into housing for teachers, housing for aides, housing for our workers. But at the same point, because we're not building housing at the scale we need to solve the crisis, all these things just take too long. And so what we can do is if we enable the state to be an actual builder, and what I mean by that is the state should build a factory somewhere and churn out units of housing every single day and build them up like Lego blocks across the state. That is how we're actually going to tackle the amount of quantity that we need to do this. And when we can do that, when we can actually build the housing that people need affordably, then we can actually tackle the problem. I mean, we see with homelessness, right? Homelessness, we have done a lot of strides to make homelessness better. And for sure, we've seen that a lot of people are coming off the street more than ever, but more people are getting onto the street than ever before. So you're scooping out water from a sinking boat. And if you want to actually tackle homelessness, you have to tackle the housing costs that cause people to become housing insecure and on the street in the first place. And so all of these issues relate to one another. And in terms of for teachers, things like that, it's about making sure we can step up as a state to actually be the builders and be the people that are building at the scale needed to solve it.
I'm glad you brought up the homeless housing that's been built. That has been rife with I say Keystone Cops could have done it better.
Slightly different.
So,
But all right, now, keep
Hold
that
on,
one in your
hold
back
on,
pocket. So,
one more
yeah, I
question.
want, go ahead.
so to add to that, I see you're talking about affordable housing. I see it as housing, and I see building codes as a real problem. I think we haven't been building as much as maybe since the 80s or 70s, and there's a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of issues of people protecting their neighborhoods. Affordable housing is different. If you're talking about the state building, but the ADU laws are still difficult to get done in Topanga, although they're in LA County. I think we need to start looking at. I mean, some of the building codes are from the 1950s.
Yes, 100%.
You
Couldn't
look at
agree more. And the worst. So I've been working on housing policy for the past 8 years in Sacramento, and time and time again, what it comes back to is building codes. What it comes back to is the financing mechanisms that mean that housing doesn't pencil. What it comes back to is there are very real underlying issues where housing doesn't pencil. And so to touch on the building codes, every single city and municipality in the state has a different building code. Yeah. They all add unique tweaks every single time. We wonder why it's so hard to build housing at the scale we need to solve the crisis. It's because when you've got 88 cities in one county, and then you also have the unincorporated areas, and you also have this, and they're all going by varying rules that are often subjective. They aren't actually as objective, and you can find that when you're building a project, a city building inspector comes along and says, oh, I know you just, cast this entire wall, but your piping was off by 2 centimeters. And so you're going to need to tear down this wall and repipe it and redo it. It's ridiculous. It's the reason why, affordable housing or market rate housing, it's so ridiculously difficult to build housing. And so what we need to do is, frankly, we need to have a statewide building code. And we need to say if there are projects that comply with the statewide building code, they are allowed in local jurisdictions. The local jurisdictions can't step up and try and block those. Additionally, there are real needs for pathways of statewide concern. So we've seen that there have been instances of housing projects in, the Bay Area, for instance, where they're trying to replace Candlestick Park, the original home of the 49ers. And that process of building housing on an empty place served by transit has been stymied by the city of San Francisco government for decades and has been blocked. And you wonder why the housing crisis gets so severe. It's because you get more people moving here, but you're not building enough housing to meet that demand. And so there's a real need for those projects of statewide concern that could have a huge impact on the amount of housing we could have to have some state overriding concerns and say, look, local government, I'm sorry. We know that we need to be doing things to meet this moment. Right now, you are not meeting this moment.
Well, money has a lot to do with it. I mean, Salesforce building didn't take long to build. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at that monstrosity. And then, so.
And it's sinking.
Yeah.
All right, Todd wanted to ask.
Sure, I have a question. When the development requires infrastructure,
Yes.
Infrastructure, and I think it was 2 meetings ago when we talked about water rates. Water rates are doubling. I think it's 50% up since our last water bills. That's all because of supply and demand. It's economics, right? The more development you have requires more infrastructure. Infrastructure comes at a cost, which we all pay. So how do you balance out the need for housing, yet everyone's complaining about rising costs when it comes to utility, traffic patterns, congestion, law enforcement? Cody's team is still 20 people short. I mean, you add more, you create more issues. How do you balance it out?
100%. And I should have prefaced by saying that you have to build housing in a place where it makes sense to build housing.
Sure.
We live in a very high fire severity zone. There are very real evacuation capacity concerns and infrastructure concerns. We should not be building in our very high.
But we live in California, where we know Southern California has very restricted and limited water resources. Mm-hmm. How do you solve that problem?
So let me give you an example from Santa Cruz. So at UC Santa Cruz, they doubled their student population in the past 15 years. At the same time as they doubled their student population, they reduced their overall water consumption because they replaced old buildings with new buildings that are much more water efficient. They replaced their old appliances with newer appliances, low flow faucet systems.
We're talking about vacant land and developing is what you said.
Yeah, well, and so when it comes to developing, what we need to do is we need developing in our urban cores next to transit where the infrastructure actually can serve that. And so
Talking about developing.
we're not talking about greenfield development. We're not talking about that. We're talking about replacing old buildings with newer buildings that are more efficient. And what we fail to realize is that if we aren't building more densely in the places that make sense, like next to a subway or something like that, it doesn't mean that housing doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It means that there's going to be another 5,000 massive sprawling development out in Riverside County. It means that we're going to lose more wildlands and we're going to have less water efficient uses elsewhere. Those problems aren't existing in isolation. We're part of the broader state of California that all relies on the same water system. And so really what we need to be doing is aligning our priorities to invest in the things that we know are resource efficient on the whole. We know that in terms of carbon emissions, actually the greenest zip code in the entire country is smack dab middle of Manhattan, because they use fewer emissions per capita than anywhere else, because they use less resources, because people are closer together. And obviously, we're not going to have Manhattan everywhere, but yeah, easy. You know, we're not going to have that. But the point stands that the more we are able to invest in infrastructure in the place where people are able to benefit off of one another, like next to trains, that's how we can actually have the resource consumption reduction that would be able to help support a lot of this change that we know we need. Because the fact is, if we don't build more housing, we're going to continue to have this housing crisis and it's going to get worse. I mean, it's going to get worse for teachers. It's going to get worse for central workers. It's going to get worse for the next generation. I think it's important that it's a hard thing to ask people to change their communities. It's a really hard thing to ask them. But it's also very clear that the status quo has not been working. And we're seeing the effects of that right now.
I have an idea. I'm just going to throw this out there. What do you think about this? I'll be curious to know, and then I'd be curious for your comment on it during your time as well. What about taking some of our farmland? We know that farms generally consume about 80% of our water, right? And then, so if we convert it, and residential about 20%, residential and commercial together. So if we did a conversion of some of our farmland, like the water-intensive farmland, to housing, that might be one way we could not consume more water, maybe consume even less water, and house more people on farms that maybe don't pencil out.
So it's here.
A second, you've never heard about, whiskeys for drinking, women's for loving, and waters for fighting?
No, I water, but what I'm talking about is like industrial size, not like the small family.
To touch on the point about water usage, like I said, 80%, and it's true, 80% of water is agricultural usage. And guess what? I think it's 60 or 70% of that is alfalfa. Right. Right. For those of you that don't know what alfalfa is, it's hay. It's what they feed in.
Yeah,
And who owns these fields?
Very few people.
Yeah. For the most part, there aren't that many.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's where the alfalfa goes. But let's not take the time. But yeah, that's the point. Okay,
so point being, but to your point about converting farmland to reduce water use because of more people, in general, it doesn't acknowledge all of the carbon impacts that happens, the electricity impacts, the other utilities that happen, and the wildland impacts. I mean, farmland isn't the most ideal form of natural preservation, but it's certainly a lot better from an environmental standpoint than a subdivision.
Right. No, fair enough. And I'm not married, so that just kind of hit me when you were talking about where. Do we have any other types of housing?
Yeah, I know. We're really
on the housing. So anyone want to ask about wildfire? I've got questions.
I have questions and I've been raising my hand.
Hello.
Hi. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Zennon, good to see you again. Second time. Great. So as far as development standards, it's not only building standards, there is a universal California state building code, which you cannot weaken, but you can sometimes strengthen at local jurisdictions. But you don't mention the actual zoning and land use and the environmental impacts, which are usually have to be adhering to CEQA and go through the CEQA process. So are you also talking about eliminating the CEQA process for this kind of housing?
No, definitely not. And I think, it's interesting because when it comes to CEQA, we saw that CEQA came about when government was doing very bad things. Government was planning to build a massive highway in the Santa Monica Bay off the coast of Malibu. They were planning to develop all of the Santa Monica Mountains. They were planning to do all sorts of crazy things we couldn't even imagine they were going to do. And we created CEQA because we knew that the government itself was doing bad things, and we needed to prevent them, slow them, and make sure that they were actually taking into account the environmental impacts of their decisions. But in process of doing that, what CEQA did is it became a law of status quo. What the law does is it doesn't say what's the most environmentally friendly thing. It says, what is the difference from the status quo, and how can you mitigate that difference from the status quo? What that means is that when you talk about building dense urban infill housing next to trains, which would reduce our carbon emissions, which we've seen time and time again through research, that project is considered the exact same way as a massive suburban sprawl in wildlands area. Even though, because what that law is doing is it's analyzing the difference from what was there to what will be there, not what it will be in the overall picture. And so in terms of CEQA, obviously we need a very strong CEQA to stop development and stop bad things happening in the places where they shouldn't be happening. It has been a hallmark. It is what has saved this state from so many bad things. But also, we need to realize that the status quo in and of itself is the reason we have a climate crisis. The reason we have a climate crisis is because we can't change the way that things are, because our laws are structured about making it hard to change things. And so in the places where it's right to change things, we need to restructure our laws to make it easier to say go, to say do. We don't, I mean, for the projects, trying to build a safe pathway from Topanga Elementary to here, right? I'd hope that it was below the threshold for a CEQA, EIR, but at the same point, even small changes like that can often be subject to these things and become the very reason we don't make small measurable improvements that would benefit us. So I certainly think there's room for reform on these things, but the idea that, we should throw the baby out the bathwater and get rid of CEQA obviously is not the case.
Great, awesome.
Is it possible to talk from here?
Hello, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Thank you. Firstly, thank you. Nice to meet you, and thanks to everybody. I have a question that I ask about a lot of things, and this is not to do with my accent. Why do we not look outside of this country to countries that are dealing with similar problems and adopt those, or have them come in and advise us? Not just other cities, but other countries. I mean, I look at, if you visit Germany, you visit Australia, which is incredibly expensive to be in Sydney, but it's so much easier to live there because of public transport and medical, if you have medical issues. And that goes to Japan and other places. I was on a panel in the mid-'80s here in Los Angeles. Thank you. Here in Los Angeles, where they were evaluating the notion of above ground rail, literally going up to 4 or 5 and others, and building a subway. And the above ground rail was promulgated by a German company that had done it in myriad of European cities. And they got kicked to the curb because money had to be spent locally, and we end up with a subway system that really feeds nobody.
Yes, and well, 2 words to your question: American exceptionalism. But beyond that, you bring up a great example. Yeah, I'll talk about California high-speed rail, the poster child of California incompetence, right?
Oh. 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, I will talk quickly about California high-speed rail. It's very difficult. But point being, when California high-speed was originally proposed, SNCF, the French high-speed rail company, came to California and said, we will build this high-speed rail for you. We have our technical experts. We know exactly the route it'll do. We've done all our pro formas. We're going to do it. And then California, because of the systems that we have, said, no, we're not going to do that. We actually made it so impossible that SNCF pulled out of building the high-speed rail because they said, this system's so dysfunctional that we don't believe that we could actually do what would be the right thing to do. And what that meant is that in order to build high-speed rail, there was a lot of finagling that happened, right? There was a lot of horse trading. There was a lot of, you got to have a stop in my cow farm, right? You got to have have this rail go through my yard so you can pay for my property. You got to make sure it has X requirements and Y requirements and has to go through X, Y, Z. And then guess what? We end up with a project that's $100 billion over budget. and doesn't go anywhere in a couple of years when it was supposed to be promised. And so in terms of talking about international expertise, yes, we need international expertise. The reason that's stopping that is because our systems are so broken compared to any other international.
We don't even look there. I mean, but 90% of the time we don't look there. We hardly look to other states, but we don't look overseas. I mean, who would consider building a subway in a city that is earthquake prone as opposed to an above ground rail system that is shown to work in myriad of countries and so many cities?
You know, I hope the Tokyo subway engineers come out here.
Just real quick, who's ever gone skiing, downhill skiing? Every single lift is built by an international company other than the United States.
Do we have any questions?
I have one thing. I was sitting here waiting, and then you said French, and I went, because that has bothered me so much. I used to have a cabin I still have a cabin up in the Sierras and everything, and you just look at it as you're driving up on them, and you just go out, and it's just, and I'm watching this go, and I know that there are a lot of phenomenal people sitting right here, and they still refuse to just take the very direct way in the French and then do the add-ons that were necessary. You look at the French, and it was the ultimate way to do it. It was just passed on.
I shed a tear every single time I board a plane in Burbank getting this stuff.
And housing, I mean, low cost housing. I mean, God knows that is addressed in so many other countries. They have the same problems we do.
And they have other approaches to wildfire too. So on the last comment, we'd be remiss not to cover the wildfire. So you want to know about with wildfire, sort of what steps you would take to reduce our risk and or deal with insurance. That would be
100%. Look, growing up here my entire life, if you know anything about my dad, I've lived with wildfire policy my entire life. And there are so many things that the state could be doing to actually support communities in hardening our homes. Right. Yeah, a lot of times going off grants that fund these programs, but they are not constant. They are not something that we can be guaranteed year in, year out. We should be paying for home evaluations for every single person. And that can even come in the form of making sure that insurance companies have to provide rebates if someone wants to harden their home, because in the end, when someone makes their home hardened, there's way less of a likelihood that home is going to burn down, and that insurance company is going to save costs in the long run. In addition, when it comes to wildfire modeling and how insurance rates are charged, they look at the previous history, which means that, even though the house is just burned down, and it's probably not going to burn down for another 30 years, at the very least, because they've had that vegetation reduction, the insurance rates do not account for that. They don't account for the fact that it's actually less risk now. That's not how the models work.
Now, your attention, please. The library will be closing in 30 minutes. Computers will shut down in 15 minutes. If you wish to apply for a library card, please do so at this time. Thank you.
Well, that's a very good timer. Very good.
What is
How open the table.
1984.
Desea aplicar para una tarjeta de la biblioteca. Por descanso en este momento. Gracias.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Well,
Fantastic.
yes. I appreciate it. And thank you guys so much. I would be honored to have you guys' support in this state Senate race. I think it's about time we get a Topanga in second.
All right, thank you for coming. Very good. All right, so now we're going to do a little switcheroo so Ellen can get in the shot. I want to make sure people can see you.
We're in trade places.
Yeah, if you want to say, if you want to say, it's up to you, Ellen.
She can be there.
Well, she might want to be closer. Think a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Okay. And then I'll just, Ellen's switching. I wanted people to know, Ellen Evans, she is many things. She's a really diverse, interesting background. She founded a neighborhood council and did a lot of work like the kind of thing we do here in Topanga. So I felt an immediate affinity for the kind of work that you do and respect for just how much detail and effort it requires. So I wanted to turn over to you and have a similar sort of introduction where maybe you describe what brought you to this place, what made you decide to run, and what you bring to the table, and why you think you're the best person for this kind of thing.
course, thank you. And I was reminded driving here that this is really the most beautiful state senate district. And even so lucky to live here. It's really, it's great. And it's wonderful to be here. So I'm an LGBTQ rights activist, a mom, and a community leader. So I came out around the dawn of the AIDS crisis and fought against discrimination and bias for same-sex marriage. And when Proposition 8 passed, I joined the board of Equality California Institute to make the change that needed to be made. But what the most important thing about that is what I learned over the years of watching people intentionally make that change is that you really have to break down the job into little pieces and do it in the right order in order to get to the goal that you get to. And I see in California, we don't always do that. And we waste a lot of money trying to get to the goal before we've laid the groundwork. And so I think California we don't have a values problem. We don't have an ambition problem. We don't have a goals problem. We have an implementation problem. So when the Great Recession ended in my neighborhood, we had and I live in the hills in a very high fire hazard severity zone like you. We had an incredible building boom. It was like everything all at once. And our narrow, windy roads were blocked. Our ingress and egress were blocked. All the time, people were getting in altercations with construction workers because they were, just basically trying to inhabit the same space at the same time. And we went to the city for help, and we didn't get it. And so I found a neighborhood association for 2,000 households. And we ended up, we tried to fight what was happening, and we would go to all the hearings, read all the environmental documents. Once we started a neighborhood association, we hired a lawyer. We, saw a lot of errors in what was being done, and we didn't necessarily convince the decision makers to vote on our side all the time. But what we did was we made the developers think that we were about to do that. And so they came to the table, and we worked with them on a construction safety program where they pay us to have a full-time monitor in our neighborhood, making sure that our roads are safe and that the rules that they agreed to, both with the city and with us, are being followed. And I've learned how to solve a lot of problems, and I'm known as someone who just gets the shit done. So, when we need traffic calming measures, we get traffic calming measures. And, whatever we need, we work on solving it. I worked really hard to get the city of Los Angeles to enforce their short-term rental ordinance, made a lot of gains doing that. In the course of that, I had to build a coalition of neighborhood groups that were affected by what was happening. And then we worked with union groups and housing advocates to get what we needed from City Hall. So that's the kind of experience I'm bringing to this job. And what I want to work on is similar to what Zennon wants to work on. I want to make sure that we're building the housing we need. I have a little bit of a different approach. I think I've talked to a lot of developers about why they're not building, and it's because of the length of time it takes them to get their shovel in the ground. And it can take, even for a buy right project, years to be able to build their project. And so I have some ideas for proposals that would make that process happen faster. And then it would mean that people could build and they wouldn't have to necessarily build luxury housing, and builders could come back to Los Angeles. And so, my depth in the details knowledge of how these things work, I think is a big asset, because I know that what happens in the city of Los Angeles is that a developer will bring their drawings to the building department, and then get corrections, and then they make those corrections and they bring them back, and it's a different plan checker, and they have new corrections. They just make stuff up, and it's not even in the code. So some things I want to do are the state legislate having a binding pre-application meeting where all the rules, all the codes that you're going to be required to comply with are upfront. That way you submit one time, and as long as you've done your job, you can go. And then also when there are corrections, nobody ever knows where those rules come from. So I want to have the state require a code citation for every single correction. So it's going down into the details of what's stopping us is what I want to work on. I think Zennon's right about the financing situation and affordable housing in the state. I'd like to streamline that. But also we want to talk about infrastructure, right? So one of the things that really got me interested in being in this race is fire safety. And in my neighborhood, our electric infrastructure is very old and it's constantly starting fires. So on January 7th, the day of the Palisades fire, we had 2 fires. One transformer explosion, again, not a rare occurrence, and another wires arcing. Just a few weeks ago when it was windy, another fire from wires arcing. It's unconscionable that we have this infrastructure. We've known that old electrical infrastructure causes some of our worst fires, and we've known that for a really long time. So it's time that we fix that. But also, we need to be planning for our electrical future, and we're just not doing that. And our distribution system isn't up to it, and it's what's going to be affordable. We produce solar at the utility scale level for 4 cents a kilowatt hour, but we've got many, many projects in the pipeline for renewable energy projects that are held up by our crazy processes that we need to reform. We need to plan out our electrical infrastructure for the state that we want to have and put that in place. And if we're planning to build a lot more housing, we need to have a plan for the electrical infrastructure to support that housing and other infrastructure, of course, also. And then in order to reach our housing goal and in order to have a bright future for our young people, we need to be able to support the building of those buildings. And we need more people in the building trades. We need more electricians to deliver on our green energy future. And so I also want to work on job training programs to help young people get good jobs that won't be taken by AI, that can't be shipped overseas or automated. And so those are the things I want to do in Sacramento, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, first, I'm glad you brought up the electrical infrastructure. If you look at your bill for Southern California Edison, you see the 2 charges on there. One is for the generation and one is for the transmission. And the transmission charge is more than the generation charge, okay? How we're going to fix that with our aging infrastructure, I don't know. But it's something we need to look at and see, maybe we need to shift the ratio between these. And I'm glad you brought up, the building trades. I took the expo line in yesterday to town, and I go by the LATTC all the time. We need more LATTCs to train the more linemen and the auto mechanics and the carpenters, and the apprentice programs are woefully inadequate for our future needs, and that's something the state could step in and help us with. You mentioned CEQA. Okay, CEQA, a lot of times I've worked on EIRs for many years, but every time I look at it, I keep on thinking about the frog in the pot, and it's going to come to a boil, and eventually, it's going to be too late. So every time you have just a little bit more, let's say you can go at 5 dB in noise, after a while, getting that. You can have an increase in traffic. You can have an increase in, volatile organic chemicals. So CEQA is a path for developers to get their stuff in. And I think that we need to have the state look at CEQA in order to preserve, protect, and plan for the future.
Okay, great. So now we know what you would do if you were running.
I agree. So I think that CEQA is structured incredibly weirdly. To have developers be doing their own environmental documents doesn't really make any sense. So I would like to reform CEQA, reformism, so that it works better for the environment by having regional CEQA analyses where we need them instead of, that are done by, governmental bodies, instead of by
Okay.
developers.
Sorry. Sure, I was gonna say, we have a question from Rosen, and I wanted to mention something in your question, responses that you made, that was really outstanding.
Yeah, thank you. It's not really a question, it's kind of more of a community call out. But I know everyone's addressed the issues with housing and it's a big problem. And obviously between Wolsey and the Palisades, we've lost a horrendous amount of houses. People haven't even got permits since Wolsey. So my suggestion would be as a community for everybody to come together and be united to save the houses that we do have here and make sure that we support the fire department and everybody that's really educated in this area of everything that they want to do to make sure that we give them community-wide support and make sure that we can do everything we can to save the houses that we have.
So home hardening, and she addressed that in her question. So did you want to mention, or do you have any, as a senator, what would you do to encourage or enable home hardening?
Yeah, so there was a huge wildfire mitigation bill package introduced this legislative session. And I expect that those measures will be passed, but as we know, California doesn't have a aspirations problem, we have an implementation problem. So my job when I get there after they pass will be to make sure that they're being implemented quickly and effectively, because,
It does seem like you've played that role a lot, like making sure stuff gets done, like getting in the weeds and doing that at the neighborhood council with all of these neighborhood problems. So on that note, I will say one of the first things I asked Ellen was about the road closures. Because Lord knows we've been impacted by that, and communities like hers have as well. So what would you do? And you answered this here, but what would you do to reduce the duration and volume of road closures? And I'm just going to call out one thing you said, and then please expand on it. But I tell you, she had me at this point here where she's like, I would incorporate the cost to businesses of those road closures into the project cost. So that would have to be factored in before a project could be allowed to go ahead. So, and that, I think, by putting in the cost of the business closures and the impact on the business into the project cost would also force the whole thing to be shorter, right? Because if you're thinking, the longer this goes on, the more we're going to have to pay for business. So on that note, I thought that was a really revolutionary thing that you said. I thought it was really brilliant. How else would you plan to reduce road closure, like duration and volume that we deal with?
When there's a lot that needs to be done, there's a lot that needs to be done, right? You just want it to be done efficiently and effectively. So I'm not familiar with the day-to-day about.
May I have your attention, please?
Okay.
The library will be closing in 15 minutes. If you wish to check out any materials, please do so at this time. Thank you.
But so I think my goal would be to make sure.
Por favor. Usted cerrará en 15 minutos. Si desea sacar algún material, por favor de hacerlo en este momento. Gracias.
But is it too late to get a library card?
Next announcement.
Yeah, so I think that the goal would be to implement policies to make sure that what we need to be done here is done quickly as it can be, as effectively as it can be, and with the greatest amount of transparency about duration. Because I know it's really frustrating to think something is going to be open and clear, and it's just not.
Yeah, it happens again and again. Okay, Todd, go ahead.
We'll go back to the topic of housing. STRs, short-term rentals, are known to consume a lot of the inventory for those individuals that want to make a profit off of their short-term rentals. That has an impact on housing for locals, for families, which can also erode away a culture of a community. You had mentioned something earlier about within your communities, you tackled STRs. Could you expand on what you did in a favorable way and what was unfavorable about that?
So the City of Los Angeles short-term rental ordinance allows people to rent out their primary residence for a certain number of days per year. So the problem is that not everybody bothers to get a permit. not everybody is being truthful about whether it's their primary residence. So I just relentless. One of the things I did, we had a problem with companies that weren't Airbnb who were renting properties that were often having wild parties. And so I just kept communicating with planning, which administers that ordinance, and telling them what was happening, and they kind of didn't do anything. And I finally made them a spreadsheet of, the 80 non-compliant short-term rentals in our neighborhood with all the links, sent it to them, and they added our bad websites to their monitoring list, and that made a big difference. But then, getting them to change the way they take evidence about what is a primary residence is really important, and other enforcement measures were really important. So we just made a big alliance and communicated with city council a lot, and worked on that, because it is an issue that it's bad for neighborhoods, it's bad for labor, and it's bad for the city, because it's in LA County, I think it's 20,000 units are on the short-term rental market, and we just can't afford that.
We don't mean to ask too personally, but where do you live?
I live in the hills above West Hollywood.
Okay, so the West Hollywood area. Okay, very good. Yeah, there.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any other questions for Ellen? Anyone on, wait.
Susan raised her
You have
hand.
a question, or is your hand still up?
Yes, my hand is still up. Hi. I just needed some clarification. You were talking about your experience, which sounded very productive, and you really dedicated a lot of good energy there in your community. The construction you were talking about sounded like it was private developers. And I think that Carrie was equating that with it and asking you a question. Topanga Canyon Boulevard, where these road closures take place, whether it's undergrounding the private utilities, SCE, or repairing our roads. We don't have problems with construction. We don't have a lot of construction going on because we have really strong land use plans. But I was just trying to get some clarity on that. Were you talking about in your neighborhood, what you and the neighborhood council that you set up, dealing with private construction companies?
Yes,
Not the public like Caltrans. It wasn't a
no,
Caltrans.
we did not deal with Caltrans. We
Right,
dealt with
right.
private developers and city agencies.
So your solution that you talked about was somehow at some point having those private contractors, construction companies, developers pay some kind of amount to compensate for when they're closing or closing the roads.
No, they give it, they pay into a fund that
Right,
just has
right.
some monitoring and making sure.
Yes. Okay, so that's not a possibility in terms of dealing with a Caltrans road, a state road, because those extra funds would then be coming out of our taxes.
Right, exactly.
Right, okay,
Right.
just wanted that clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting, thank you.
We would propose that at the legislative level, because I think if that sort of compensation for businesses were incorporated, it would reduce the number of projects and the duration of them. So, and I don't understand why businesses just have to eat that cost. So I wish somebody legislatively, and I understand we can't do that right now, but I would like to see a senator or an assembly person take that cost up. Because in our last road closure, where it was closed for over a year, businesses suffered 30, 40, 50% declines, and they gotta eat that. Nobody has to pay them for that. Somebody should be compensating them, and the county did its level best to find money where there was no money, and it wasn't their fault or their job, but they found some money to try to offset that burden. But we need a better plan going forward. We can't just let these businesses keep being forced to absorb it, because emergencies seem to happen every year or every other year. It's too frequent.
Yeah, I would certainly be, working to fund small business relief for situations like that.
Great. Anybody else have a question for Ellen? I've got lots of questions. Anybody else online besides Susan? Although Susan, your question was good. Thank you. That was good. For getting that clarification. All right, so let me then ask another question. Insurance. How would you tackle insurance? Now I know there's the insurance commissioner, and everybody knows we have an insurance commissioner who deals with the laws that already exist for making sure that we have insurance and it's affordable. It's not working very well. How would you, from a legislative standpoint, what might you suggest passing or trying to pass with colleagues in the Senate to make insurance more available, more affordable for Californians?
So there have been a number of bills introduced again that seek to hold the insurance companies accountable, that seek to hold both for paying claims and for giving people discounts when they do home hardening. But I think that the number one way to reduce insurance rates is to reduce our risk. And the number one way to reduce our risk is to take care of our electric infrastructure. And the number two way is home hardening. And so we've seen some bills, and we passed a proposition that was supposed to provide funding for home hardening. And I'm going to make sure that that happens, because we also know that one person hardening their home doesn't do it. We need whole communities to do it. And in order to have that happen, we need robust funding.
Well, I mean, what about climate change? What about the guys who are lighting the fires?
So I think, so we're moving towards our electrical.
Those are number ones.
Right, we're moving towards our greenhouse gas free future here in California. We're going for zero emissions in 2045, and we need to lay the groundwork for that so that happens. But and people say, we have fires in California. This is California, and there's climate change. But that doesn't negate the fact that many of our most destructive fires were caused by electrical equipment. And so
some people, what are you talking about? Many
are people, and I don't know, I don't have a solution to the
electrical, PG&E up north, and that, yeah. Yes.
Right.
Hold on one second. I remember Gavin Newsom threatening, was it PG&E or Edison, to bring them back to us when I see that as the bigger issue is the electrical, these companies the telephone poles up here from the 40s, and if you want to deal with infrastructure, you have to probably take over those companies. They're not going to make it easy.
I think we have to change our way of funding, because it's not going to happen the way we're going.
So taking over then, just to interject, because there's a lot of stuff you're layering in there, though. With Gavin Newsom and the electric companies, it's a funny situation. They sort of want to keep it private because then it keeps the liability on of companies. When the government takes it over, then the government has that liability. She has no way, no insurance.
That's just an excuse.
Yeah.
You guys, there's a big difference between the city's Department of Power, and which is public utility, and SCE, which is a private, and that's what we've got. But I wanted to mention that and ask about the funding that you're talking about would be for these hardening initiatives, et cetera, and then vice versa, and then the benefits on that would be potentially lowering the insurance costs. Is that correct?
I'm here. All right, I'm so sorry. All right, everybody. All right, so it's a complex, multi-layered thing. I do think, what is your amenability to potentially, do you think that's a non-starter, or is that something you see as part of the solution, potentially moving to a publicly owned?
I live in the city of Los Angeles, and LADWP is my utility. Don't recommend that one either. Yeah, we do have to find a way to finance what needs to be financed, to have it not be on the backs of the ratepayers, and to make the changes we need to make. And try to reduce our fire risk as much as possible. And I think we can do it. I don't know how we can deal with arsonists. I had to personally
I totally agree. And the reason I brought up climate change is we need to start embracing this speeding this up.
Yes, I agree,
Yeah.
yeah, I just almost finished a brief on energy initiatives that'll get us to zero emissions, so.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
If you
Excellent.
want
Who's been to the brewery downtown? Okay, Edison's power plant is still standing there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a model for electric generation that is very old, and times have changed, in case you haven't noticed.
All
Yeah,
right,
but
great.
it's shocking that we're, yeah.
So final questions, if anyone has it, otherwise I'll finish off with,
Just one more, you mentioned grants, and or rebates from insurance companies. Has there been any thought of having tax rebates from a state level, just like the solar program of years ago, where therefore it's more of an incentive, because we know with insurance companies at the rate of escalations of the premiums, the rebates that they get is not material enough. Or at least with it that's coming from the state and state rebates or credits, I should say, tax credits. Would that be more of a better approach?
That's a great idea. I would certainly be interested in looking into that. And I know, my insurance rates went up 25% this year, so I know. I'm lucky, but.
Okay, so Ellen, did
It's
you
a lot.
want to go ahead and take this remaining time to just, any final thoughts?
So, as a president of neighborhood association, and a member of my neighborhood council, it's been my job to listen to people and to try to take the action that benefits them. On my neighborhood council, which isn't what I started an association, I'm on Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. I chaired a subcommittee looking at a proposed wildlife ordinance that was supposed to protect wildlife corridors, and the community was very up in arms about it. And we did a series of hearings, and I listened to them and produced a comment letter that reflected what the community, what best expressed the intention of the law and the reservations of the community about that law. And that's what I do best: listen to what people want and try to implement it. And that's what I do as a state senator, and I'd be really honored to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got a lot here. You have to take in a lot of different perspectives, kind of synthesize it, and then come up with solutions. So thank you. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. Well, we are going to adjourn this town council April 2027. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.